Welcome to Jazz at the Library, brought to you by JazzFresno, with the support of the Woodward Park Friends of the Library, KFSR 90.7, and our JazzFresno investors. We are pleased to bring you the Rick Helzer Trio. This is a recent recording done especially for Jazz at the Library. JazzFresno is a local nonprofit whose mission it is to promote jazz education and performance in Central California. We all know that the world is currently going through a difficult time. The arts have always served to capture, reflect, and comment on the events of the time. The arts are also a way to cope with life, bring serenity, escape, and peace to a turbulent world. JazzFresno is going through a difficult time currently as our coffers are dwindling. It has become increasingly difficult to take care of basic things like paying license fees for software, website hosting, bookkeeping fees, and all of the typical things that are easy to take for granted. If you are familiar with the work of JazzFresno, then you know that we have sponsored scholarships, clinics, workshops, jazz educator conferences, jazz festivals, concerts, the Milestones Youth Jazz Project, the We Got to Beat percussion band, and our signature series, Jazz at the Library. In order to keep this going, even virtually, we need your help. We need your financial commitment. It is critical that we develop a trove of regular contributors. We are asking that you commit whatever you can comfortably afford. Perhaps you are unable to contribute financially at this time, but you believe in the mission of JazzFresno, and you want to be involved as a board member, committee member, social media sharer, volunteer, or audience member. We are looking to expand our efforts not only in terms of money, but in terms of people power. Our website is jazzfresno.net. There you can make a one-time contribution, set up monthly investments, or send us an email expressing your interest in helping. We look forward to hearing from you. Rick Helzer recently retired as professor of music and the associate director of the Jazz Studies Department at San Diego State University, where he coordinated the undergraduate jazz theory, jazz composition, graduate jazz theory, and combo programs. Rick has returned to once again make his home in Fresno, and we, the jazz audience, are the beneficiaries. Rick has performed, composed, arranged, toured, and recorded extensively throughout his lifetime. As a composer, Rick has written over 300 compositions, and I would like to list them all for you right now. No. Rick Helzer is an exceptional talent and a product of Fresno. Rick and his trio, consisting of bassist John Laufenberger and drummer Gary Newmark, negotiate some treacherous musical landscape in order to bring you this performance, in addition to the obvious risks of coming together to make music during a pandemic. We hope you will enjoy this presentation of Rick Helzer and his trio.
I just want to thank JazzFresno for this incredible opportunity to present this music. The work that was done is amazing. I really want to thank some people. First and foremost, I want to thank Bill Reeve and Joe Lozama for all of their work in putting the video together. And I do want to also thank Chuck Yerlegi, CM Jazz Studios, for his recording expertise. A great atmosphere, a great piano. It's been really been a real blessing for us to be able to do all this work. And I also want to say too that Chuck was really generous. I asked him how much he wanted to be paid, and he said, consider this my part of the contribution to JazzFresno and to this particular project. So that's really great. So I do want to talk a little bit about the artist whose music we're going to be playing. His name is Richie Beirach. not quite as well known probably as Chick Corea and Keith Jarrett and Herbie Hancock, but he's kind of in that generation. And one of the things that struck me when I was putting together this biography is that a lot of my heroes are not that much older than I am, so that's kind of a scary thing, you know. But Richie Beirach, who's now 73, he started playing the piano when he was 5, and it was a really interesting kind of a situation. He was at a family camp up in the Catskills, and he was taking a walk with his mom and dad, and he heard this piano in one of the cabins, and he had never, at that point in his life, had never heard a piano or even seen one. So he was immediately drawn to the cabin, and he ran in there and was listening to this kid playing chopsticks, and he was just totally fascinated by it. And when they came back to Brooklyn, where they lived, he basically badgered them to buy him a piano, and they did. They bought him his first piano when he was 5. He called it a cheap white little spinet, but he said it didn't matter. And they had to find lessons for him, so they found a piano teacher, and I'll put that in quotes, a piano teacher in the neighborhood, a woman with a really long German name, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. But he had one lesson with her, and what he found out was that she didn't know how to read music. So that was very short-lived. And then later on, what he did is they found a really good piano teacher. He was a concert pianist, and his name, James Palmari. And I looked him up, and he had a fairly impressive career as a concert pianist. So that's when he started studying seriously, and he actually was with him for 13 years, from the time he was 5 all the way to the time he was 18. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about his influence. Well, I wanted to say that Richie had been playing the piano from the ages of 5 to 12, and what happened is he actually went into a record store one day, and he heard Miles Davis's Milestones album. And the track that was playing when he walked into the store was the trio track with Red Garland and Paul Chambers and Philly Joe Jones, the famous track on Billy Boy. And he was just totally entranced. So he had what I would call two epiphanies. The one that when he was 5, when he discovered the piano, and then all of the work that he did with Mr. Palmieri, and who basically taught him all about technique, and how to play classical literature. And then when he's 12, he gets into this thing with jazz, and it was like he just knew that's what he wanted to do. And when he was a little bit older, he used to go with a friend of his to places like the Village Gate and the Vanguard. They had what was called the peanut galleries, where underage people could listen. So he was able to hear all kinds of folks: John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Miles Davis. It was just a feast for him. So that's when he started kind of turning, and he continued to study with Mr. Palmieri. He didn't have any influence on him in jazz because he was a concert pianist, but he started learning how to play. And then I'd say the first fortuitous relationship that he developed was with saxophonist Dave Liebman, and they've had a lifelong friendship. And they started playing together, and they were living in a one of those loft situations. Actually, Dave was on the top floor. Chick Corea was on the floor below. Dave Holland was on the floor below that, and it was basically a musician's center. This is where a lot of these lofts they were inhabited by musicians. So he talked a lot about the incredible jam sessions that they would have, like in Chick's loft or Dave Liebman's loft, and all kinds of people. Yeah, Bob Moses, Randy and Michael Brecker, Clint Houston, just all these different players. And they also worked a lot together, just as a duo, just studying. And Beirach actually went to the Manhattan School of Music, and he got his theory and compositional experience while he was in school there, and he studied with she was like the chair of the composition department, and her name was Ludmila Ulea, and I'm not saying that I pronounced that correctly at all, but she also wrote a very significant book on music theory, on classical theory. So he got a lot of harmonic training from her, and then he and Dave had their first big breaks with major artists. Dave actually went with Miles Davis, and then Richie got called to play with Stan Getz. So that's when they began to get notoriety. And since that time, those early beginnings, they've done a lot of recording. They've had two very significant groups over the years. One's called Lookout Farm. That was with Frank Tusa and Jeff Williams. Really great band. And then later on, they had another group called Quest. That featured, let me think, Billy Hart and Ron McClure on bass. And they've done a lot of recording. And then the other really significant thing that they've done over the years is they've done a lot of duo recordings and performances. And I would recommend anything that you can get, anything that you can buy recorded by Quest would be well worth your while. The Lookout Farm albums are a little harder to find. Their first album was called Lookout Farm. It was on ECM, the ECM label. They have not reissued that on CD yet that I know of, but you can still find it on LP. And then they had a couple really, what I feel are significant duo albums. One's called The Duo Live, and then the other one's called Forgotten Fantasies. Now, beyond those major artists that they started with, Richie's also played with Jeremy Steig. Jack DeJonetti played in John Abercrombie's quartet for a number of years. Lee Konitz, Dave Holland. So he has a rich history. Now, one of the reasons why I love Beirach's music is because I've always loved composers who don't write what you would expect. I've done, for JazzFresno, I did a presentation on Wayne Shorter about 2 years ago, and I did one on Carla Bley. And the thing that I liked about their music is the harmonic context of the music was very different and very refreshing. And Richie Beirach is actually no different from that. So I'd like to introduce the first tune. The first tune that you're going to hear and actually see, thanks to Bill Reeve and Joe Lozama, is called Natural Selection. This was composed back in 1979, and he revised. He's a reviser, and if I have one of many influences from him is that I actually have been going back through some of my older tunes, and actually I've been adding like 10 to 15 to 20 years of experience and what I've grown in, and reforming some of these tunes. So this one was revised in 1988. He recorded this with Quest it was on the Evidence label. 1, 2, 1, 2. The next piece we're going to play is a jazz waltz, and it's really a really lovely tune. And again, harmonically, it's very unusual, but it's very beautiful. I think the thing about the harmonies in his music, and like the music of Wayne Shorter comes to mind, Kenny Wheeler, some of these composers that just take harmony in different directions. And Trust is a really interesting piece because they don't write the music tonally. The music is actually, and I could say this also of natural selection. The music is kind of what's called the genre is called chromatic modal harmony, and I wish I would have coined that term. But one of the jazz composition professors at the University of Florida has written books on that. But it's just basically a way of adding a lot of chromatic content harmonically, and the progressions don't necessarily follow a more traditional tonal pathway like you would hear, say, in bebop jazz or standards even. So this tune's got a really interesting and a beautiful melody and very interesting harmonic changes. And this was he recorded this back in 1995 with Dave Holland and Jack DeJohnette on an album with the same title, Trust. Highly recommended record. And I was just going to say too that the thing that's really interesting about this tune is his use of pedal points. A static bass note or bass line with harmony changing over the top. So instead of having a moving harmonies with the bass end, you have the static bass with moving harmonies on the top, and that creates all kinds of different interesting variations, because you're not just playing the root of the chord in the bottom. Sometimes you're playing the third, the fifth, the seventh, or you're even going further away and you're playing like the ninth or the 11th or the 13th. So it really does some really interesting things with the harmonies. And this tune, I think, really kind of reflects some of the theory information that he learned when he was at the Manhattan School of Music too. He's very Richie Beirach's very eclectic in terms of his influences. Besides, Chick Corea and Bill Evans and McCoy Tyner and Miles Davis and John Coltrane, he's also very much influenced by late 19th century music like Bartok. He's very much into the Impressionist composers, Ravel, Debussy, and in the modern composers like Stockhausen and Hindemith. So he's very versatile, and he's also a big fan of James Brown. So he's very eclectic in his music taste. So this is Trust. The next piece we're going to play is entitled Pendulum, and he recorded this way back in 1978 on the ECM label, and he recorded with George Mraz on bass and Jack DeJohnette on drums. This tune's very different from the first two. It's based upon what Dave Liebman in his Chromatic Harmony and Melody called drone. Now, drones are very common in Indian music, in Indian classical music. So this tune basically starts off with a drone of F sharp, but there's all kinds of moving harmony over the top of the drone. And in the recording that he did with Mraz and DeJohnette, they have the freedom not only to extend things harmony over the pedal, the drone, but George Mraz moves the drone around, so it's almost verging on free improvisation, but it has that structural component of the drone. They always have that to kind of draw back to. So that's what we're going to be playing for you next. This was composed back in 1978. The next tune we're going to play is not a Richie Beirach tune. It's actually one of my tunes. And it's a dedication to him and Dave Liebman. It's called Emeralds and Other Fantasies. Now, I know that sounds probably like a kind of a strange name. Emeralds actually refers to a title of one of his records, one of Richie's records, and Fantasies is, I kind of copped that from Forgotten Fantasies. So anyway, this tune is, again, different. This is actually another tune in 3/4. It's very much, it's a very slow 3/4. It's almost a ballad. Again, harmonically, it reflects my interest in chromatic modal harmony. I wrote this a long time ago. I wrote it way back in, I think it was like 1987. And this is one of the tunes that I kind of came back to. I have a stack of old manuscript books in my music files in my office, and that I've held on to. Music that dates back to as early as 1970 that I just kind of I held on to my notebooks. I'm glad I did. Anyway, so I was just looking through one of my old music manuscript books, and I came across this, and I was, oh yeah, and it had never been, I had never played it. It had never been performed by any of the groups that I was involved with. So I kind of took a look at it, and I did some revising, gave it a new ending, you know, changed a few melodies, and just kind of put in some more stuff, stuff in it that kind of reflects where I'm at now. So, and this is a great, John takes a great bass solo on this too, just so you know. So this is Emeralds and Other Fantasies. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. The next piece we're going to play is kind of somewhat related structurally, or I should say conceptually, to Pendulum. It's not a drone, but it's the kind of a piece where the actual song structure provides for, I call it open-ended improvisation. And open-ended improvisation essentially, when we think about that, a lot of the time we go back to Ornette Coleman and his quartet, and they called the playing at the time, they called it free playing, and that's basically, and I've never liked that term, because when you play this way, you're always thinking about and considering structural context. It's not just a, now there were some music back in the 60s, free jazz, that was a reflection of the social times and the Black liberation movement, and some of that music was really intense, collective improvisation, just everybody kind of going for it. But this particular piece, there's a context that the actual composition provides for us to work with and to work through. So there's like a 13-bar theme, and then from there we go into our improvisations, and you'll hear me soloing, and John, and then Gary takes a really nice drum solo at the end. And the thing that's always challenging about getting back into these tunes, since you don't have a set structure like Stella by Starlight, you have to figure out something to bring you back into the tune. So we came up with a little routine for Gary to play at the end of his solo, where he would actually play the last couple measures of the tune on his drum kit, and that would be our cue to take the tune out. Now those things are those kind of cues are very interesting, because you got to really pay attention or you won't come in correctly. So, but Gary, and the other thing that I was telling Gary when we were rehearsing it is like, okay, Gary, the one thing I don't want us to do when you're coming to the end of your solo, I don't want you to kind of like just hang out and play time and look at us and say, okay, I'm going to play the cue now. I said, I don't want that. I want it to be a smooth, seamless transition from the end of your solo into this cue. And he just pulled it off really, really well. So I think you'll find it very interesting. It's up tempo, and it's very energetic, and harmonically, it's pretty abstract, but it's fun. we wanted to close the this presentation tonight with a really beautiful piece of Richie's. I would say it's a ballad, I guess. It's kind of an even eighth note, slow even eighth note feel, and it has a real. It reflects his classical influences harmonically, and it's entitled Elm. And it starts off. It's kind of an atmospheric piece. It's a very slow moving but a very lyrical melody, and the tune is kind of dark. It's kind of in a minor key, and it's in two parts. The first part is the initial theme, and then the improvisation, which is based upon that structure. It is what we would call a closed form. It's got chord changes to it. We improvise variations over, and we when we play the tune. And we get done improvising, we go back to the top and we play the theme, but then something very interesting happens. That you don't hear the second section of this piece until we take the song out. It only is played one time. But it's a really incredible transition compositionally, because he's gone from this kind of, I don't want to say, introspective, kind of dark minor key. And then when he goes to his last release section, he basically develops the theme, the original theme, but he goes into a major key. And when you hit that first major chord, it's like the sunshine comes in. It's a really beautiful transition. So I hope you enjoy it. there's our presentation on Richie Beirach, and we really appreciate you watching and listening. I want to thank two of my best friends for being a part of this project. John Laufenberger on bass and Gary Newmark on the drums. I'm sure a lot of you know who they are. They've been, while I was away in San Diego over the years, they've been really active in the jazz scene here in town and keeping it alive. They're two of my best friends, and it's just a joy to play music with them. And we've actually been getting together on a weekly basis, and it's really been really rewarding and thrilling. And when I presented them with this idea for the music, they just naturally said, well, of course, let's do it. So I really want to thank them. Their musicianship, their creativity, and their friendship means the world to me. And again, I do want to thank JazzFresno. We've got this situation with the virus, and they've not let that, haven't let that deter them from their mission. And I'm thankful, and I really appreciate being a part of this institution and what they're doing to promote this incredible, really beautiful music that comes from our country. I mean, it's spread out all over the world, but it wouldn't have done that had it not been born here, and I'm just thankful for that, and just thankful for their advocacy and for all the work that they do. And I'm hoping at some point in the future that we can get back to the Woodward Park Library and do them live again. I'm really looking forward to that. I've already got ideas. I had a vocalist friend of mine come here last year, Ellen Johnson. We did a program of Mingus music. She and I have been talking about doing a program of Fred Hirsch's music, another one of my favorite composers and pianists. And we also had planned to do the music of Kenny Wheeler with Gary and myself and Spee Kozlov and Larry Honda and Dale Engstrom. Hopefully we're going to get that one going. I've got all that music. It's all ready to go. And then I've also been thinking about doing yet another project of another one of my favorite piano players, Herbie Hancock, and to do kind of a just kind of a dedication based upon all the music in the Speak Like a Child. So I'm hoping these things and just everything else that everybody else is doing to contribute and to keep this going. So thanks again. We really appreciate it.